All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our webinar. We are thrilled you have chosen to spend some time with us today, and we will not disappoint. In today's marketing ecosystem, there are common struggles in the pursuit of effective strategy and use of the direct mail marketing channels, such as rising costs, declining data addressability, siloed marketing, and fragmented audiences. And today, we will explore how to overcome these hurdles in a complex marketing landscape. In particular, we will focus how a strategic omnichannel approach, including the resurgence of direct mail, can cut through the noise and deliver breakthrough performance. Now, since the dissolution of the DMA, it has been increasingly important, in my opinion, to have research studies and data regarding marketing best practices. And we're in for a real educational symphony today with the exploration of the Winterberry Group Delivering Performance Report and the insights from our expert panelists. Now, real quickly, just a couple of housekeeping items and the agenda for today. We will begin with some quick intros. Then Jonathan from the Winterberry Group will lead with a review of the Delivering Performance white paper and report. And then I will lead a Q&A for insights from our expert panelists. If anybody has any questions, please just pop them into the chat. I will get to them at the end of the webinar as we have a lot to cover. So now for some quick intros. I'm Morgan DeGiorgio. I am the Chief Revenue Officer for Direct Mail 2.0 and Who's Mailing What. And collectively, our sole purpose is to make direct mail the most effective form of marketing by integrating it with cutting-edge technology. We have a 15 technology omnichannel marketing platform with real-time reporting dashboard that integrates into direct mail campaigns to lift the response rates on average about 50% and provides tracking and attribution data. And our Who's Mailing What platform assists printers and brands take mail to the next level with competitive intelligence insights and lead generation opportunities to seek and acquire new direct mail customers. Now, as technology companies, we are constantly evolving and finding ways to add value. Our newest project will be unleashed this year with our DM20.ai platform. So keep your ear to the ground for what we're going to do next and don't miss out on the next value added service you should be leveraging to bring your business and revenue to the next level. Jonathan, I will kick it over to you. Give us a quick intro, sir.
Thank you very much, Morgan. I'm Jonathan Margulies. I'm a managing partner at Winterberry Group. We're a strategy consulting firm based in New York, focused exclusively on what we say are the intersecting disciplines of marketing, advertising, technology, data, and analytics. Practically what that means is we spend a lot of time working with service providers in the marketing world, agencies, data companies, technology platforms, production services vendors, you name it, helping them think through disruption, changes in their market, and how they should be investing to best support their own growth. We do quite a number of other things as well, which I'll get into in a few moments. That's me.
Impressive. Fantastic. Thank you, Jonathan. Stefanie, you're up.
Thanks so much for having me, Morgan. I'm Stefanie Cortes. I'm VP of Business Development for the Direct Marketing Division at RRD. I think many of you that know Donnelley know us for our core history as a printer, with our experience in direct mail, specifically going back nearly a century ago when we produced our first mail order catalog, which is kind of wild to think about right now. Since then, we've continued to evolve with the times to becoming a leading marketing solutions provider with really specialized expertise and the largest direct mail platform in the industry to support modern marketers. We've also expanded our portfolio over the years into being an end-to-end partner for packaging, supply chain solutions, by driving efficiencies for clients with our global scale. As part of the leadership team, my main role is solely dedicated to the direct marketing practice, with my main focus being keeping a pulse on and predicting market trends, ensuring we have the most sophisticated and diverse solutions to best support our clients with their business goals.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stefanie. Happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Greg, please tell us a little bit about you and More.
Okay, great. I'm Greg Fox. I'm Chief Strategy Officer at More. More is a constituent experience management consulting company, that works on all medium, all channels. Our primary focus is working with purpose-driven nonprofit organizations across many different sectors of the industry, large and small. Personally, I've been in the industry 40 years. I've spent most of that in the nonprofit sector, and I'm glad to be here today. So,
thank you. We're pleased to have you as well. All right, Chris, we will have your intro now, sir.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me with all these other panelists. So I'm Chris Foster. I'm VP of New Business Development at Modern Postcard. It's a hybrid role that touches both marketing, sales, and strategy and product development. Modern Postcard focuses on direct mail marketing solutions for SMBs, mid-market enterprise agencies, nonprofits of all sizes and types. Our unique specialty is focusing on helping small businesses, especially with traditional and automated direct mail. So they can use this channel in acquisition, retargeting, and retention, along with integrating other digital strategies with the direct mail marketing to really focus on reaching the right person at the right time.
Very important. Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. All right. Well, now we're going to kick this over to Jonathan for the Delivering Performance Report review.
Thank you very much, Morgan. Let me get deck ready to go. And if you can't see anything by now, tell Morgan and she'll tell me, but this seems to be working for me.
We can see it. You're good.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to spend a few minutes laying some of the foundation for a kind of an up-to-date view on what's happening, not just in the direct mail ecosystem, but really kind of broadly across the marketing ecosystem as people think about data and the role of data-driven media like mail as part of omnichannel strategies in general. I mentioned before at the outset that our work focuses exclusively on sort of these intersecting disciplines and suppliers that live in that world. From very early days of our practice, we believe strongly that you have to keep sort of a highly concerted, focused view on the trends and dynamics that shape these industries if you're going to be useful as advisors to folks in the space. So understanding and keeping tabs on what's happening from a media and execution standpoint as a means of understanding how it impacts suppliers and others has always been core to our practice. Direct mail plays a real important role, and as we continue to learn, sort of a foundational role in how people think about and use other channels. And so it's a topic that we're close to. For the last few years, we've been pursuing it in a structured research project that we call Delivering Performance. And so the content I'm going to speak to for the next 14 minutes or so is derived from the last research that we published on the topic back in December of last year in conjunction with a number of partners, some of whom are represented on our panel today. Our goal in this exercise is to kind of keep tabs on how brands are engaging with mail first and foremost, but more importantly, how they're thinking about their evolving priorities and the changes that are going to need to have to keep the channel front and center, but keep their marketing efforts continually effective and efficient as they think about their future investments and structural needs otherwise. We published this in a fairly extensive paper last year, and so I'm only going to have time to really hit some of the highlights today. I think as you'll come to learn that even for a channel, we often talk about using terms like traditional and established and what have you. There's really quite a bit that's changing, and even more that's changing or poised to change the channel as we think about what's happened since we published. I think to start with the basics, direct mail continues to represent one of the largest and most strategically important marketing channels in use by brands today. We've been tracking annual expenditures in the channel broadly across postage, production, materials, a host of other functions involved in campaigns for the better part of 2 decades. And as best we can tell, it continues to represent one of the top 5 measurable channels of all marketing media that brands in the US are using to reach audiences. Last year, direct mail expenditures grew in the aggregate of about 2.6% over the previous year, which in itself may not sound like a particularly stellar year-over-year growth. But when you contrast it to the performance of the previous year, when dollars dropped 13%, the previous benchmark. You get a sense for just how impactful even a modest rebound can be. Mail continues to command enormous budgetary influence and enjoys this kind of stability for a number of reasons. Some of them somewhat short term, some of them really well established in the fabric of priorities that are driving marketer investment. For starters, of course, 2024 was a more stable, consistent year macroeconomically. Short-term volatilities aside, marketers tell us that they felt more confident about budgets and were more willing to set aside budget earlier in the year for campaigns than they had been previously. Over the long term, we know that brands of all sorts are prioritizing investments that drive specific, definable performance outcomes, whether that's new customer acquisition, incremental sales, reactivation of a lapsed customer. And direct mail is foremost among the performance media channels that drive those kind of black and white results. We've been arguing for years that even as certain digital media, paid search, paid social, and the like capture headlines for their performance impact, so much of the practice and the practice that drive those channels was really established and continues to be used by effective direct mailers on an everyday basis. Uniquely last year, maybe for the first time since some of those competitive digital channels really achieved maturity, we saw direct mail benefit from the growing cost and the heightened complexity associated with those channels. And this is a much longer discussion, but as digital media have grown more expensive and as digital data has grown less addressable, given regulatory changes, given changes to data access and security policy, changes among tech developers that may require you to say opt into the trade of data among other parties in the digital ecosystem, direct mail sort of emerged as a more favorable outcome. In fact, we heard anecdotally and across a broader panel many stories about brands reallocating dollars to mail last year that previously were earmarked for digital. 2024 was a election year, of course, you may remember. That always has positive impacts, not just on mail, but all sorts of media channels. And in fact, much of the net growth in the channel last year is more or less directly attributable to what was happening in the election realm. And then finally, data. Data remains available, and the quality of data that is accessible to drive high performance direct mail campaigns continues to grow, and that's driving confidence and that's driving investment in a way we hadn't seen previously. Of course, as dollars remain robust in the channel, we're seeing a secular change otherwise that's changing the nature of mail. As those dollars grew in 2024, volumes continued to decline in the aggregate, and continuing a trend that's been ongoing for a number of years. You don't have to dig deep into USPS reporting to know that mailboxes in the aggregate are getting a little lighter than they were previous. And so even though we talk about stability from a spend perspective, quite clearly direct mail as a channel is becoming one that is being marked by, let's call it, more strategic precision use of the channel, even at lower volumes. And so we lost a little bit more than 1% of total volume from the marketing mail flow. As you might imagine, the reasons underlying that sort of systemic change are in many respects similar to the reasons that actually reinforce confidence in the spend. Marketers, as they focus on performance from an effectiveness perspective, make this piece resonate with a recipient, are also focused on the efficiency of their campaign. Help me send less mail, particularly to folks that are less inclined to response. Marketers, more than ever before, are focused on the net ROI of their total marketing investment, which has them focused on those components that are driving less volume, more reason to cut less performing, let's say, deciles from their audience base. The embrace of all things data-driven, the embrace of all things that engage in segmentation, targeting, personalized content, the use of triggers is I think having a very, very positive net impact on mail and the role that it plays in the mix. But the the role of it is also switching from a vehicle of mass communications to one that can be used in deeply impactful ways to engage smaller, more targeted audiences. And we hear as well a lot of concerns in circles about the high upfront cost of direct mail, and that representing something of a concern to brands that otherwise are used to the deeply performance oriented pay approach of let's say comparative digital media and the like, all sort of adding up to a paradigm whereby marketers deeply focused on the channel intend to keep it in the mix, but in very different ways than perhaps they have previously. What brands tell us they need in a go-forward basis, though, is pretty diverse, even as they reflect some great confidence in where mail is headed. Far and above other priorities that we hear, the need to integrate mail better with other channels, other elements of more complex customer engagement strategies, right? And so we call this omnichannel sometimes, we call it multi-channel, we call it connected in some verticals and the like, but the bottom line is pretty consistent across the board. Marketers are growing less siloed, less tunnel visioned in how they think about their independent efforts and trying to put the customer, the target, the audience at the centerpiece of all of their marketing investments. And so the ability to stand up consistent infrastructure, technology, operations to support all the channels at their disposal, a universal priority. Foremost among those, that sort of integration effort is, of course, measurement. If you understand what you're spending, if you understand the incremental performance impact of every dollar of that spend, you can better slide the levers to really optimize the performance of the next campaign. This is an area where skilled practitioners will tell you you're never going to get 100% perfection in any approach. There's widespread recognition that there's a lot of room for direct mail to improve and for direct mail to gain greater acceptance in measurement and attribution approaches, and also the supporting technology that support the same across a wide array of channels. We expect that for that reason, measurement and attribution will continue to remain a heavy-duty priority of brands going forward. As will, of course, AI, because all things AI are occupying that kind of attention and priority in not just the marketing suite, but certainly the C-suite. Our panel of media and marketing senior executives was, as you might expect, rather bullish on the opportunity for AI to advance the value of direct mail for a whole host of reasons, right? The better use of available data, better tailoring of content to drive relevance. Today, of course, most of those applications are mostly related to workflow of complex direct mail campaigns, creating derivative creative variations and the like, but a lot of enthusiasm for the role of AI in all sorts of campaign strategy, planning, composition, and delivery functions for the long term. Even though, while they pursue that sort of long-term opportunity, what we learn, and I think that maybe opened eyes the widest on our side, is that mailers are finally reaching a tipping point in terms of their adoption and generation of value when it comes to a number of innovations that are maybe a little bit more incremental, a little bit less, transformative than AI, but in many cases have been in the works for mailers for years and always sort of positioned as leading edge stuff that is finally now coming into the mainstream and delivering real, substantial, everyday value. So we asked our panel of mailers, for example, are you using actually several different handfuls of potential options, and is it driving value? And what we learned is across the board, investments in personalization, in the retargeting of digital visitors, integration of third-party marketing technology maybe wasn't custom designed or designed first and foremost for use of direct mail, the use of behavioral triggers, QR codes. These aren't niche. These aren't emergent. These aren't experimental test approaches to just eking out a little bit more value from direct mail. These are now market standard best practices that brands large and small are relying on to both maximize the value of their investment, but also, back to a theme from a couple moments ago, better integrate the use of mail with other channels where response mechanisms of these types are just standard the way those channels are integrated. I think that speaks well to the potential for direct mail to continue delivering upon its omnichannel potential over the next few years. There's much more in terms of what's actually happening today in our research paper, but particularly as we think about the kind of topics we want to discuss with the rest of our panel over the next 45 minutes or so, we concluded our study with an analysis quickly of some steps we think that both brands and suppliers are going to need to take to advance the value of their direct mail programs over the next few years. I don't think many of them will come as a surprise. I mentioned performance as sort of the primary theme that continues to drive brands to engage with direct mail. Well, for many brands, ensuring its continuance in that dynamic mix of channels is going to require that you manage direct mail through the same lens of a performance vehicle that you manage certain paid digital channels. For a number of reasons. Operationally, it makes more sense. It's going to be better. You're going to be better positioned to allocate dollars across those channels appropriately. But I think there's also an advocacy angle here. Direct mail isn't just a print channel, a traditional channel, something that is wholly different from the other touch points at your disposal. It is a core performance driving vehicle, same as certain others, and should be managed that way and elevated in the marketing mix and in the budget of the organization. Those that are doing that are seeing some pretty substantial benefits to that. We think that it's going to represent a best practice sooner rather than later. Of course, doing that requires the ability to measure the results of those direct mail efforts, continually test different scenarios, and in ways that are very similar to the way that you're managing digital and other efforts. And so likewise, I probably could have said measure, measure, measure as an imperative at almost any time over the last several decades, and I would have been spot on. But now measure, test, and do it in conjunction with other media is the real challenge that are facing marketers and the opportunity to shine over the long term. Continue to evaluate and invest in data-driven technology that supports holistic campaign management, that supports the optimization of spend across both mail and other addressable channels. Goes without saying that the better you're able to orchestrate a combination of touch points centrally, the better off you're going to be able to do. This is typically a very difficult step, though, for brands. There are lots of tools out there, and precious few of them are custom made to support all channels, sort of equal level of control and optimization. So the evaluation burden really does face the marketer first and foremost. But as technology improves, the task of doing the integration work will theoretically get easier as well. And so focusing on that is a real task at hand going forward. AI is probably the central tool, the central technology function that offers the opportunity to drive truly transformative performance improvements. And so even though it's sort of dangling out there as the long-term objective, understanding both what it does, understanding how it can impact your programs and campaigns, and understanding the timeline for integration is something that all organizations should be concerned with right now. And then finally, think about your org structure. Think about how you manage direct mail. Think about the role of operational silos internally, where they benefit you, where they may be hindering your ability to think and act in an omni-channel basis. I think it's easy for folks like me to simply sit here and say, tear down those silos, tear down that direct mail operations group, tear down that team that speaks in one language from one media channel, but not others. When the truth of the matter, of course, is that sometimes operational silos serve very good purposes from data governance, privacy perspective, incubation of expertise, et cetera, et cetera. The prescription then for any organization is going to be very different from the next one based upon their needs, their mix of media, their budget, their vertical, you name it. But keeping a close eye on that and being very intentional about how your org structure supports what you want to accomplish from a marketing perspective is something that I don't think can happen in the background anymore. It really does represent sort of the central responsibility of central marketing, and something that will help you derive value from every touch point. That was about an hour's worth of content in a very short period of time. I told this team before we started I could have gone even longer, but I'm gonna stop because I think our panel is going to have much more interesting things to say. Our paper is available. It's available on our site at winterberrygroup.com/insights. It's available from a number of the panelist organizations that we're going to talk through in a few minutes. And so I'm gonna pause here and stop sharing, and we'll go back and have a good discussion around many of these themes. Thanks, everyone.
Jonathan, thank you very much. You did condense quite a bit of data into a very short time. If anyone has not taken a look into that Winterberry Group delivering performance paper, as Jonathan alluded to, is available on their site, it's available on our site, and I'm sure a lot of the other panelists as well. So much data in there that can be leveraged for effective marketing strategy surrounding omnichannel and effective best practices for direct mail. We're increasing ROI and marketing spend, not just for yourselves, but for brands and your clients as well. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the panel. I've definitely have some questions, and I'd love to get their expert insight on a few things. So the white paper highlights the dynamic interplay between direct mail and digital channels in shaping omnichannel marketing. And, this is something that at Direct Mail 2.0, we've built an entire business around because there is an exact need for that. And it does help in leveraging the highest results from the direct mail marketing channel when you're utilizing direct mail and digital. So I just want to pose to our panelists, from your perspective over the years, what's the most significant shift you've observed in how businesses are integrating these channels? I know that some have been slow to adopt these principles because, from a lot of what Jonathan was talking about, breaking down those silos can be very challenging. So I'll start with you, Chris. And what have you observed in how businesses are integrating these channels or moving into an omni-channel marketing strategy?
I think the biggest change is the mindset from the sales folks who are actually talking to customers. I think that they are moving from, a performance marketing perspective that's a single channel to performance marketing that's across all channels. And I think what's important for what marketers intuitively understand and we get as we start moving through our careers is that each channel has a specific job. You don't ask a digital channel to do the job that's really best suited for direct mail and vice versa. I think sales folks have a harder time understanding that and communicating that to their clients, and really knowing that deeply. That the Facebook ad has a very specific job to do in terms of awareness and interest and maybe getting somebody to the website, but that's still a tough ask. If it's an acquisition Facebook ad and you're scrolling and you're looking at your neighbor's puppy and your friend's vacation, and then you see an ad for something that's interesting and you keep scrolling, it's really hard to get someone to actually act on that and then actually truly convert. Whereas the direct mail retargeting, for example, like we've talked about, is a touch that happens after someone visits a website and the direct mail lands. That's a very specific job that card has, which is different than awareness or interest because the customer already expressed an interest, and that the job of that card is to get someone to actually act. So I think that, your question of what that big challenge is for the sales team who are talking with individual clients to recognize that the digital component of a direct mail program and the direct mail component of a digital program each has a different job to do. And you kind of explain that to the customer in terms of setting expectations, because when they look at response rates and attribution, they might challenge or question. But if they understand fundamentally that it all works together and they all have a different job to do, it makes the conversation a little easier. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Historically, years and years ago, it was this proverbial tug of war between, where should I invest my marketing spend in digital or direct mail? And the truth of the matter is that if you're not leveraging both and having them woven together in a cohesive marketing strategy, you're leaving a lot on the table because they do each play an intricate role in the entire marketing strategy. And I like what you said about getting the sales team to digest and be able to effectively speak to that to a client, because that's a big ask too for someone that's been
Sure.
just specializing in direct mail, for years and years, and having to position yourself as a marketing expert or someone that's leveraging a different channel that might be foreign to you. So I agree with you, Chris. Thank you for that insight. Stefanie, what about you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think kind of along the lines of what Chris was saying from the seller's position. I think from the client position, I'm seeing a lot of how, buying patterns have definitely changed as a result of this shift from essentially mass marketing to micro marketing, or you'll see in Jonathan's white paper, they talk a lot about from volume to value. So as an example, national advertisers still need to reach a national audience, but are looking to more micro targeted and fully integrated campaigns, essentially localizing portions of the population at a specific time, which is very different than, 10, 20 years ago. So I think this has really led to this growing need for all these new technologies, such as, as everyone knows, QR codes, pearls, retargeting are all very highly effective for this reason, as well as the significant growth in digital printing, as well as we're seeing a lot of marketers seeking partners that have system integration to support, fully integrated channel strategies.
Nice. Yeah. No, definitely agree, right? We have to be more strategic, especially with the cost of mail rising. But, even if you think about from a digital marketing perspective, you put spend in and you have an audience, and the very sophisticated algorithms on the back end aren't displaying the same amount of ads evenly across that audience. They're displaying the right amount of ads to the people that are showing the highest propensity to be likely to convert, right? And maximizing that utilization of that spend. And so now we're looking to do that more with direct mail as well. So, Greg, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, from a nonprofit perspective, I think that the biggest shift that we're seeing, and it continues to evolve, but is that more and more organizations, more nonprofit executives are embracing the value of direct mail and the role that it plays in an organization's overall marketing strategy. It wasn't too long ago that everyone said, as we all know, that DM's dying. But just the opposite is happening, and these organizations, to many of them, to their chagrin, is that they understand that it plays a vital role, far bigger than what they initially thought. DM in a lot of these organizations, and the most evolved, is no longer just considered a program. It's not considered a channel. We consider a channel the way somebody responds. More and more, they're seeing that direct mail is a vital media. Just like everything else people are sending out, it's a media, regardless of where the person is choosing to give. Across our sector, there's this desire to get younger audiences. And because, as our traditional 70-year-old donors are dying off, they have to get younger. And the mindset is digital, digital, digital. But the fact is, today, we're finding that direct mail is super effective at targeting younger audiences. In fact, all the research is showing now that they prefer to get it that way. They may choose to go online to give, but direct mail played a vital role in getting that. The other thing is, as direct mail continues to sort of increase its importance, I think organizations are starting to put more value, greater value on the incrementality of DM from donors who are initially acquired that way. For example, a lot of organizations are finding that 25% or more of their online revenue is coming from DM acquired donors. They're finding that a third of their DRTV campaign data or DRTV revenue is coming from DM acquired donors, and that 70% of their plan givers who give, hundreds of $100,000 a year, no, $100,000 when they die, they're being attributed back to their giving a first gift to the organization in direct mail. So while attribution rules aren't really fully used in direct mail like they do in other medias, organizations are becoming fully aware of the value that it brings to the organization. And finally, it is really pushing the frontiers of this audience-driven approach to what we do in the nonprofit sector. So it's a very positive change that has been taking place.
That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And, to be fair, okay, everybody talks about the rising cost of direct mail with all the postage increases, but the cost of digital media has been rising as well. And the response rates to that have been going down, whereas the response to direct mail seems to be getting better and better, especially as there's less real estate in the mailbox. It's making more of an impression. And I agree with you that there is this huge misconception about a younger demographic responding better to digital when all the statistical research and data out there shows they prefer to be marketed to with direct mail, and they see it as a more trustworthy channel. And I just can't think of something better to leverage when you're trying to increase your audience for nonprofit. So that's very, very insightful, Greg. Jonathan, what about you? What's the most significant shift you've observed in how businesses are integrating these channels?
That is an important question. It's also a really hard question to answer because of just the focal point of the question itself. I can answer that question differently based upon every end user vertical. Were we talking about enterprise customers or are we talking about SMBs? Because it's totally different. There are a few themes though, that some of my panelist colleagues here have called out that I think are real important. Stefanie, for example, mentioned the concept of volume to value that we talk about in the research. The other way I've heard that sort of articulated over a year is the need for targeted mass, right? That particularly among, let's say, enterprise class companies that have national or sort of super regional reach, they love direct mail because they recognize that it is a reliable mechanism to reach large audiences, and they need access to those large audiences to fill their customer funnels, to help support the kind of scale and response and purchase activity conversion that they need to put points on the board. At the same time, the value that's inherent to this channel is by leveraging it for the targetability, the personalization, the ability to deliver a relevant appeal, a message that compels an action. And so you can get the mass is sort of the cost doing business, but if you can't drive that bottom line impact by leveraging mail for what it's distinguished by, you're only getting part of the potential benefit. The other thing I call out that is still very much sort of a work in progress right now is, and we're seeing it from marketers downstream, but we're also seeing it driving a lot of innovation and investment among folks in the direct mail supply chain, is the need to simplify the process of standing up and executing campaigns, particularly campaigns that include digital components, cross-channel components. And this is an area where you kind of see a distinction between how an old school direct mailer thinks about their work and their challenge versus someone who maybe came up through a digitally centric career path in their organization, kind of expects that they should be able to orchestrate all the media touch points that are part of their portfolio from their screen, right? Leverage common dashboards and interfaces and the like, whereas the more old school person is picking up the phone to call an agency, to call a production partner, to call a data broker, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The table stakes of modern marketing are, what's in front of me? What can I orchestrate? Can I run this from a command post kind of setting? Direct mail hasn't historically played as well with that kind of campaign management system, but that's changing. And increasingly we're seeing folks in the supply chain do everything possible in order to make direct mail more addressable, and essentially steerable in the way that complementary digital channels are being transacted and executed. And so I think that's the area where you haven't just seen the most change recently, but we're likely to see the most change over the next few years.
Thank you, Jonathan. Very insightful. I just want to talk a little bit about metrics because Greg, you had mentioned something about some of your clients were seeing a certain percentage of response from the direct mail. And I can tell you that over the course of my career, one of the greatest challenges that I find with marketers is that they have a very challenging time tracking the performance of just a direct mail campaign in general. Then when you start to layer additional technologies on top of it, it starts to become a little convoluted about, which came first, the chicken or the egg, and where are we attributing the response and to which channel, and where did they enter the funnel, and what was the key or core driving channel in the response in this campaign. So I think I'll start with you, and I'm just curious, because the Winterberry Group's research emphasizes delivering performance. And what key metrics or KPIs do you see your clients focusing on? Because you guys are very heavy on omnichannel, right? But what do you see them focusing on when measuring the success of their omnichannel direct mail campaigns, Greg? But not only that, how are they attributing this percentage of response to the DM specifically, like you were alluding to?
I mean, it's a great question. And, it's, we conduct this annual survey every year, and we look at we try to look into the answers for why revenue is up, why revenue is down, look at campaign level performance. And in somewhat surprising, year over year, we find that DM performance isn't changing much. Response rates to donor campaigns are very consistent year over year. Average gifts are up a bit. Overall income per name up a penny or two. The biggest change that we do see is that acquisition response rates decline, are continuing to decline, which is being offset by higher average gifts. So when you just look at metrics like campaign performance, you don't see a problem. You don't really get a good view of what's taking place. Also, in our industry and others, is that we think of KPIs in terms of retention rates and gift frequency and average gift, but in fact, these metrics don't tell much of a story. In fact, they can be very misleading. They're difficult to move. I think retention rates have been the same largely for the last decade or two. The only thing that is lower is acquisition response rates, and they can be manipulated to the point that they can do whatever you want them to say. So it's important that when we look at KPIs now, we are lining those KPIs with what our annual strategic plan and our annual objectives are, and that it will vary from organization to from one organization to another. It's important not to think of it as an omni-channel direct mail campaign, but rather an omni-channel campaign that uses direct mail as a part of that mix. And how do you validate the value, equate a value to direct mail in that total omni-channel engagement? And once you make that mind shift, I think you can get out of the realm of response rates only to a true omni-channel cost to acquire and the lifetime value. We still find this, Morgan, is that most people, even though we want people to participate in multiple channels, most people prefer to engage in a single channel. And there doesn't appear to be much movement year over year in donors migrating from one of their preferred channels to another. For fact, in the last couple of years, we found that of only donors who have ever given offline, of those who gave the next year, 99% of them gave only in direct mail. 90% of those who have only given gave online, and gave again the next year, over 90% of them only gave online. And then very surprisingly, donors who gave in multi-channels, most of them, only a third of them gave again in multi-channels. So, but that doesn't mean that direct mail as a media was not influencing where those gifts are going. So that's why it's very important to find out the value that BM plays. We can't just look at performance and say that didn't work, right? We have to match back campaigns, whether it be acquisition mailings. We do know that people under the age of 50 who are giving are being motivated by a direct mail piece. But if you don't use matchback logic to go back and evaluate it, then you would never know that. So really, it's about engagement with the brand. It's about multi-channel engagement. It's about engaging with the organization. And direct mail is going to play a role in all those factors.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I definitely do know that a buyer or a marketing prospect, they prefer to start the marketing journey in some channels, they prefer to convert in others, but they all do play an integral role. And omnichannel has been so effective at driving that increase in conversion through the channel that marketing prospect prefers, right? Like at the end of the year, since we're talking about nonprofit or giving, right? I'm giving so many asks, for my alumni or all these other organizations that I donate to, but I am so busy, right? It's not like something that I jump right into, but because they utilize a multi or an omni-channel approach, it gives all these additional opportunities for me to convert through the channel that I prefer because they're reminding me of it. Otherwise, they're most likely to get that check or that online debit card donation from me 6, 7, 8 months later, right? Because I forget about it and it's stuck in that stack on my counter or on my desk of like, oh yeah, I need to do this or write this check, right? But when you keep getting back in front of me, you're eliciting that response to that channel that I prefer to engage in. We know that on average, a marketer is leveraging or utilizing probably about 8 different channels in the prospect journey, right? But they are still converting through the channels in which they prefer. Absolutely.
And the problem in the last part, the problem is that there's still very little integration amongst the different programs or channels.
Right.
And the experiences are fragmented. And nonprofits have to get better at that if they are going to continue to evolve here. So,
And you can help them with that, though, can't you, Greg?
absolutely, all day long, all day long.
Fantastic. Stefanie, what about you? And I'm curious, as a heavy direct mail service provider, right? I would think there's probably a really core focus on wanting to be able to prove to a direct mail marketer or brand that the direct mail is a driving force in their overall strategy. And so, what KPIs or performance indicators do you feel that your customers are focused on to judge the efficacy of their campaigns, and how are you showing proof that the direct mail is playing an integral role in the overall campaign?
Yeah, well, I definitely agree that buyers have or donors have a preferred channel that they more consistently interact with. But we're really heavy on a test and learn methodology. But compared to the past when it was we're going to test and learn from specific direct mail only solo campaigns, it's more about learning incrementally and adding and adopting what mix of channels work best versus radical changes like this didn't work, so we're dropping the mail channel, or email doesn't work altogether. So given our recent acquisition of a major player in the digital marketing space, we now have all of those resources and talent under one roof. So we're able to, do these more robust and sophisticated testing and learning strategies with the right mix of channels versus this one doesn't work or this one works better altogether. So, and it's very individualized to the person. It's not a, one to many situation most of the time. It's a, one to one. So it's a very a complex balance, not a perfect science at the moment, but I think we're very close to, getting there in terms of, having robust reporting and attribution metrics to support that.
Yeah, and are you speaking to the Velasas acquisition?
Mhm.
Sure. Yeah. And I love what you're saying there. It's about testing and you don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So I like that you push back on that a little bit and really dig into what's working and what's not. I don't see as much A/B testing as I feel like I should in the marketing space just in general. So, Chris, what about you? What are your clients focusing on from a response perspective, or what channels or KPIs are they honing in on?
I think it's dependent on the kind of business that they're in, where what is more important than others. For maybe the larger enterprise brands that are looking at a variety of response channels, return on ad spend is the key performance indicator, period. We have very little control over return on investment in terms of the margin, like the gross margin of a business, right? That's not something that we can control. And so we work with them to figure out what the return on investment is so that it's good and profitable for them. But we're more concerned on the return on ad spend. So that for them is if I'm spending $1 in this marketing channel, am I getting $1, $1.50, $2, $4, et cetera? So we focus on that for our clients. I think for small business, they're less concerned about return on ad spend, I think, and more concerned about how many new customers did I get. So for that group, it's more of an education on customer lifetime value, and we kind of try to help them with that to project that over time, because for them, they're willing to spend a little bit more to get a customer, because for a smaller business, it's the customer that they need, because they can get a lot of lifetime value out of the customer. Whereas for an enterprise business, they might be looking at a seasonal sale where they're trying to lift some top line for spring or summer and the like. So the ROAS is more important to them. So those are the two different metrics we look at. Of course, with retargeting, we look at engagement. And when we do omnichannel, we look at engagement. But in the end of the day, the customer really wants to know, if I did spend $1, am I making that back? And to Greg's point about using a variety of match back services and the like, we can determine that return on an ad spend for any customer program.
Sure, very important, right? So let's not focus on the specific channel, but the results. Were more leads driven into your organization? Did you
Right.
generate profit on this? Absolutely. Very
You know,
important.
and I think that's what marketers want to know, right? I mean, marketing in itself it's not for the faint of heart, right? You have to be a little bit bold and courageous to spend money on something that truly is an unknown. Right? You never actually know what the performance will be until you see the results. Even if you have a predictive model, even if you have past performance metrics, it's still something where you're spending money, right? And you just don't know if you're going to get that money back. And so one of the things that I think is helpful about direct mail is that it is very conclusive, be it sour or sweet, right? We work with a lot of clients who say, gosh, I spent $10,000 over the last 3 months on my social, and I don't know if it worked, right? With direct mail, that's not the case. You do know if it performs or not. So I think that's one of the areas where even if the response rate isn't what you like, of course, you do it well, it should be what you like, right? Because it works, the channel works. There's a certainty about it and a stability and a reliability that other channels don't necessarily have.
Absolutely. No, I agree, Chris. Well, I want to move on to this next question, and Jonathan, I'll pose it to you. Each of the companies on this webinar today do provide omnichannel strategy as a service, right? As marketing experts, we know what is delivering the highest ROI on marketing ad spend, but I've been in the print industry for quite some time, and in my experience, more print providers than should have been very slow and reluctant to adapt to these marketing trends or being able to deliver the highest value service for their customers, or even best practices, not just for direct mail, but for marketing as a whole by providing omni-channel services. They just kind of stick to old ideas or to what they're used to. And do you feel that your adoption of omni-channel or effective marketing tactics has grown your business in the last few years, Jonathan?
So I bearing in mind that I'm a little dissimilar from everyone else in the panel, in that we're not an agency or selling that, but we work with companies who are doing that kind of work all the time. And I think we started, weighing in on this topic. The transformation of old school marketing service companies into more hybrid solution providers probably 20 years ago. I wrote a white paper sometime in that vicinity about how printers in particular would have to adopt a marketing services orientation and then feel sort of unencumbered from any one channel in particular if they were going to continue to thrive. That I think is still a good directional North Star for the industry, and certainly we continue to see best performers in the services industry be those that adopt essentially the objectives and needs of their client organizations as the guiding principle for what services they should be investing in and how they orchestrate different media channels, capabilities, what have you, in the furtherance of those aims. It's not always that simple. In fact, it's rarely simple at all. And it doesn't mean that at some level, marketers aren't going to default to whatever the simplest reductive pattern is to identify what it is you do, and you do particularly well relative to others in the space. But kind of picking up a little bit on our theme around KPIs, if it, when all is said and done, you can substantiate that you helped drive business results that matter to that brand. It doesn't really matter what you do or what services components exist under the hood. You're going to find yourself a good and loyal base of clients for the long term. I think more often than not going forward, as the clients themselves tear down more of those silos that have distinguished different channels, being focused on those outcomes and being focused on weaving together different media to really take advantage of what they do best is a great directional best practice, a great thing to basically aspire to. But on a day-to-day basis, still being able to stand up an ability to strategize, design, build audiences, print, buy media, do all sorts of things that may look a little tactical, still sort of the cost of managing complexity on the client's behalf, and that's a value that so much of this is off.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, I can just personally share. I mean, I have insight into a lot of competitive sales that are going on because I work with print providers all over the United States. Whilst I would never divulge any individual, company or organization or what they're doing or who they're selling to, but I see this printers bidding for RFPs all the time. And I see ones that are adding omnichannel or value-added services, and I see the ones that aren't, and they're not the ones that are winning the business. Because if you're not doing something above and beyond, or you're not providing value-added services, that's something that's attractive and shiny and in alignment with best practices and overall marketing strategy and increasing ROI on ad spend, and marketers and brands are migrating over to these print providers that have these value-added services. And I also see businesses go out and acquire new direct mail business all the time by positioning something of value of, hey, we can layer omni-channel on top of your direct mail. And I also see businesses lose customers by not providing a value-added service. So, whether it's omni-channel or whatever it might be, but in all reality, as a print provider or direct mail service provider, you are selling your customer marketing. You are selling them leads, and it is just so integral that you are leveraging the most optimal way to do that and positioning yourself as a marketing expert and leveraging the best type of strategy. So if you are a print provider or a mail service provider or even a brand, I would encourage you to tap into that Winterberry report and really dive into all of the data that's been compiled and put together for best practices and really see how that can be leveraged within your business, whether that's you as a print provider or if you're a marketer as well. So I wish we had more time. I could really talk about this all day long, but we are at the top of the hour here. We're at 3 p.m. I just want to thank all of our panelists for taking time with us today. Just so insightful, all of you. Really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody that joined us today. Everybody have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.